And so I'm talking about in search of a male self-identity. Not just male identity. Your self-identity, and asking the question and trying to respond to who am I? I want to start with an introduction because definitions help you to put a handle onto where you're going. So in terms of the understanding of the concept of identity, basically, when you speak about your identity, you are essentially speaking about an aspect of who you are. And your sense of yourself, your sense of your gender, your sense of your race, ethnicity, religion. So this is my identity. Who are you? I know who I am. I am aware of my race. I'm aware of my gender. I'm aware of my religion, identity. And so, in so doing, your self-identity helps us to locate ourselves within the social matrix. Because everybody's coming with an opinion of something. Now, if you and I don't have a clear sense of who we are, then somebody will define it for you. If I don't know who I am, then I'm open for fair game. It's like Paul on Mars Hill. He went through and he observed a sign to the unknown God. That is what you call confess ignorance. So when he started to talk about the God, he says, him declare I unto you. Now they couldn't say that is not him because they've already confessed that he is unknown. You follow me? So when we carry ourselves as this unknown entity and someone tries to define us, it's very difficult to actually rebut. What is your identity? Your sense of yourself, the way we see ourselves as individuals, the way we interact with others, and the way within our own culture and other cultures we are defined and appreciated. Self-identity is a critical ingredient for personal success. Because every time we engage another person, it is about identity. Think of the amount of times we say I in our conversation. Not in this iManship, but we say I. I like. I don't think. I feel. If it was me, all these are self-identity issues. When a man say, oh, you red, you say, no, me boy. That not me. What are you doing? We are defining who we are. So people with weak boundaries of who they are, if it's very, very weak, then you're open for fair game to find something that looks like you. So, I like what this author says. The author says, a knowledge of our identity is not something you are born with. It is something you have to investigate. So, it's a lifelong journey of self-exploration. Who am I? The philosophers of ancient times, they were bogged down with that question. Who am I? And so it's a constant journey of self-discovery. You know, sometimes, let's say wife would say, Don, what you want to eat? Say, what's in it? I don't know. She said, all right, I'm going to do this. I said, no, I don't want that. So I know what I know that I don't want something, but I don't know what I don't want. It's a kind of confusing thing for people. So there's this constant journey of self-discovery. So in this first section, I like to establish the source of our identity, because that's where we must start. If we are biblicists, if we are governed by a Judeo-Christian ethics. The first is Genesis 1:27 and 28. Here's what it says. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Now, since God is not material, then the image there is not something physical. Something of the nature of God. He imprints on us. But here's the interesting thing. Image and likeness is spelled out. It's fleshed out in male and female. Male and female. And then, and God blessed them and said to them, who them? Be fruitful and multiply. And then chapter 9 of Genesis verse 5. And surely your blood of your life will I require, the hand of every beast will I require it, and the hand of every man, and the hand of every man's brother will I require it. Whosoever shed man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed, for in the image of God made he man. And he answered in Matthew 19:4 and 5, and said unto them, have you not read that he who made them from the beginning, made them male and female, and said, for this cause shall a man leave father and mother, and shall cleave to his wife, and the twain shall be one flesh. So when you begin to talk about a sense of identity in terms of the source and the creation, it begins in the embryonic sense with these passages of scripture. Because what we learn from this is this. One, God established very clearly your gender identity. Okay? No confusion there. Currently there are over 70-something genders being generated. Blessed. But with God and with the beginning, there is no complication. Your gender identity is established. The current thinking is that your gender is socially constructed, which means what's in your mind, how you were socialized, what the culture says you are. That's not the starting point with God. The starting point is He, God, as creator, as imprinting His image on man. So any deviation from male and female is actually an attack on the image and likeness of God in man. So they say my gender is socially constructed, but my sexual identity is how I look physically. But your gender is who you think you are in your mind. So you can have biologically a sexual identity that's male, but a gender identity as other. So let's choose an option, because there are 70-something options. Let's say I choose the option, a simple one, that in my gender I'm actually female, but in my sexual identity I am male. So I would be a female trapped in a male's body. But legally, on my birth paper, I would have sex male. So I can then go and reverse that, because I'm after my gender, not my sexual assignment. So I can change my gender to be female. But what God did, notice very closely. As soon as God spoke to gender, them, who is it them? Male and female. The next thing God says to male and female is this: be fruitful and multiply. He doesn't give breathing space for us to assume that gender identity and sexual identity are two different things. So he says, male, female, and confirm your sexual identity now, be fruitful and multiply. So maleness is not confused, femaleness is not confused. How I feel or think in my mind, male and female, allows me to procreate. So God doesn't separate male and female from your sexual identity. So God establishes your gender identity. He establishes your sexual identity. He could not have said that to two males. He could not have said that to two females. And in separating the identity, it creates confusion. Trust me. Here's the other thing that God established. Your human and social identity. He says in verse 5 and 6, look, if an animal mauled a man, or if another human being killed another human being, God says, I will deal with that primarily because every human being has worth. And your worth is not tied to a piece of legislation. Your worth is not tied to being born into a family or being part of a group or a gang. Your primary social worth is because you're image bearer. Notice what God says. And surely your blood of your lives will I require at the hand of every beast, will I require at the hand of every man, and in the hand of every man's brother. Whosoever shed man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. Why? Because he is the son of somebody mother. No. The image of God. So every attack, like murder, which is the ultimate expression, is an attack on your social value. Notice when we see brutal killing, we say, oh God, them is animals. Or we try to appeal to our social connection when you're faced with a criminal. Oh God, I'm a father, I'm a grandmother, I have a little youth. What are we doing? We're trying to place value on our social identity by connecting with other human beings. But it doesn't start there. That's on the lower end of the totem pole. It actually starts ultimately with a God who places value upon us and starts us there. As over against evolution, which starts us as evolving from and evolving from. And when you evolve from, then your value bumps down. God establishes every human being have value. Here's the fourth thing. God also establishes your marital identity if you're going to choose to be married. Look what it says, huh? You must leave not two fathers. You must leave not two mothers, actually. You leave father and mother and be joined to not your partner. You are joined to what? Your wife. And the two shall become one flesh. So you do not find your identity, marital identity, from leaving a home with two daddies or two mommies and being joined to. So God establishes very clearly our gender, our sexual, our human social, and our marital identity. And it is from this framework you begin to think of maleness or femaleness, as the case may be. Anything outside of that, you have a fractured identity. So we do have a male identity crisis. Primarily because we have moved away from it. Look at the basic thing. The first thing you have to do is a sense of your gender, male. Be clear about that. A sense of your sexual identity, that's procreation. A sense of your social identity. I have worth. Not because you say I have worth, because God says I have worth. I am created in His image and likeness. You can call me black, ugly, nigger, coolie, Chinese, honky, wherever you want to call me. Doesn't really matter. Because these are just temporal labels people use to try to define me. That's why I talk about not just identities, self-identity. When God sees you, God doesn't identify us by the size of your head or your nose. That's what defines us. We look at our bicep and our triceps and the thing and that is what defines you. No! Masculinity flows from image and likeness, which is not something physical. Here's what God did. Adam went to sleep a bachelor and he got up by the altar. And the ceremony was already finished. Guess what? God didn't give Adam the chance to say what he really wants. What we have done, remember, male and female created He, them in His image and likeness. What we have done, we have reduced the worth of the woman based on the physical properties. So they have their identity crisis too. They want to impress us. So they do all kind of stuff with their bodies. They fail to understand from the word go, their bodies were never part of the equation as it relates to their identity and worth. You think women don't have identity crisis? They want to look like Marilyn Monroe. They want to look like this one and that one and that one and that one. And we feed the myth that identity is tied to the physical characteristics and then you have worth. You see, for the woman, when I deal with the woman, I tell them whether they are Coca-Cola in bottle or can, it's still Coca-Cola. Understand? So then, we do have a crisis. We don't know who we are. Because we move away from the framework of the template, we're in search of who we are. We don't have our own voice. We really don't. We have personality disorder. We call it narcissistic. You ever hear about a narcissistic personality disorder? This is a person who's in love with themselves. And it actually came from a Greek mythology where Narcissus was a hunter who was known for his beauty. Narcissus saw his own reflection in the water and fell in love with it. Not realizing it was merely his own, he was unable to leave the beauty of his own reflection. He got lost, and his loss was a loss to live. He stared at his reflection until he died. First he love himself. Man, that is man. Narcissus then is the origin of the term narcissism. A fixation with oneself and one's physical appearance and or public perception, because I am the center of the universe. That's the biggest problem with men. We have egos. I went to a conference that says, egos and logos, leave it at the door. We come in. We give women to decorate this place, they do it. After they did a little cat fight, they will do it. But man, Jesus have mercy. Everybody needs to show you how much they know. From my experience, all the years of working with tiles, have you ever noticed, a new tradesman, you'd know that. Every tradesman who comes after a tradesman bad talks the former tradesman. Or you know that. Who put on that carpet there, boy? Well, I know what you're doing now, boy. That just sales pitch for the job. Because we love we sell distorted images. We try to be a composite of different people. We pull this, we don't know who we are. Like a plasticine man, the loss of the self. We become plastic surgery addicts. I want to look at my sister, and the boy breaking nose so much time. Plastic surgery, because I don't know who should I look like. We become mutilators of the self. We cut. We do suicide. Because I don't like me. We struggle with gender identity issues. We learn to wear masks to appear normal. We're trying to find who we are. We become strangers and prisoners to ourselves, locked into prisons of depression. We become an Oreo biscuit person of color. There are some brothers. They are black on the outside, but they're white on the inside. Or they're black and they try to put white. We become caught in the bleaching craze. Our total worth is defined by 6 to 8 inches. That is my worth. When a man becomes dysfunctional, or suffering from erectile dysfunction, there's no reason to live anymore. Let's go to glory. We put false images on this of the self on Facebook because there's a crisis. Now, the loss of our real identity. You see, sin alienated us from 3 primary dimensions of the real self. Alienated us from God, alienated us from ourselves, and alienated us from others. When sin stepped in, there was a disconnect from the self. From God, the self, and others. Now, when you study the Genesis account, you will discover that there are 4 dominant emotions that disconnected us from ourselves as we lose our identity. The first is this. Shame step in. Shame forces us to lose ourselves. Because in Genesis 3, what happened? The behavior when we are shamed, we cover. Because shame has to do with your sense of value and worth. Here's a second emotion. With shame, you have things like exposure, embarrassment, secrecy, and you could develop a shame-based identity. And there, in fact, could be issues of deep esteem and worth. Something somebody told you about you that you're ashamed of. Something you have done that you're ashamed of. And you are hiding. You're still covering. There's another emotion. Fear. Fear disconnected us from ourselves. In fact, when you study it closely, you will discover when we are fearful, we hide. Because fear brings dread, anxiety, punishment. And what happens? Some people can develop what is called a fear-based identity, where there is abuse, threats, bullying, intimidation. When you come home, what your parents deliver to you, and what are you delivering to your family? When your wife, if you're married, hear the car coming, or your children hear the car coming, what emotion do they feel? Run out, daddy, go and hide. Then there is guilt. When there is guilt, we blame, because we do not want to take responsibility for our stuff. Do you remember Adam and Eve? God comes to the man and says, what have you done? Hey boss, not me. It's the woman you give me. He throw bone of his bone, flesh of his flesh under the boss. Because when we are guilty, we experience culpability of wrongdoing. And so in some families, you can have what is called guilt-based relationship, where there's manipulation, punishment, evidence finding fault, finding victim blaming, going down the road, and we disconnect further from ourselves. And then there is anger. When there is anger, we lash out or we lash in. When you lash in, you go into depression. When you lash out, we go into vandalism and violence. Because with anger, there is explosion, that's what goes on the outside, and implosion, that's what's happening on the inside. Notice, with Cain and Abel, lash out. With anger, resentment, unforgiveness, harsh words, disdain, hostility, ultimately murder, and I can develop an anger-based relationship as a man. So we have fallen, and we are disconnected from the real self. There is, in fact, in trying to find our way to the real self, there is some confusion of terms. The first term is your status. Your status is the position you hold in any social system. You could have ascribed status or achieved status. Watch this. You don't have to ask for status. Status could be ascribed to you. Let me give you an example of this. Once you're born, and you're born first, that is an ascribed status. You're the firstborn. Nobody wants to know if you're prepared for that. But here's how parents start. You're the first. You're supposed to know better. Oh, why are you supposed to know better? I was never here before. You're a man. That's ascribed status based on gender. And there's an assumption that you have it down pat, that you come fully loaded like a car. But have I come fully loaded? And then there is achieved status. So if you choose to get married, then your status changes. Because status has to do with position. Because you're a holder of a status doesn't mean that you are outfitted for that particular status. You see, we generally start with the next term. That's why it's kind of confusing. We start with the term roles, which we'll get to. So when you talk about status now, you can talk about actual status or psychological status. When it's an actual status, you can say, okay, this is a police officer. That's the actual status, the position. But your psychological status is your mental and emotional adjustment to the status. So because I stand at the altar and Pastor Ken pronounce you, now you are husband and wife. You think I just flip on become a husband? Some of you brethren, you sign in the register at the last mile. Because ascribe, achieve, actual or psychological is something we need to work through. Because we are fallen creatures. So the pressure men are under in terms of their identity. We sometimes assume that our status is synonymous with your readiness. And people impose that also on you. Because where we really start is roles. We really should be starting with status. Where's the role of the man? Where's the role of the woman? You see, my friend, your role actually flows from your status. So when you see behavior, that's roles. Expectations, that's roles. But it actually flows from the position. And before you can get to your role, you have to understand the psychological adjustment that prepares you now. Look, because you go in the hospital and your wife delivered the first baby, you hold her baby, you think that makes you a father? That's something you have to learn. Then the awesome responsibility. That's why some men just boss it. Because by status, they are fathers. By role, I'm born. So here's what women actually do. Women pressure us with our roles. We pressure ourselves with roles. But we have not dealt with the status issue yet. Because a man graduated from the police academy, that doesn't mean him not a thief. He have the status of a pastor. That's the office or the position of a teacher, of a doctor, of a lawyer, of a this. But guess what? The position needs now to become a psychological reality so you can fulfill your role with pleasure. Because I'm seeing now there's a connection here and there. The next thing is authority. So women start with role, but men start with authority. I is the father. I in charge. Because your authority is the right bestowed to legitimize use of power flowing from your status, whether it's positional power or relational power. Whoops, let me go back there. So here's what the problem is. Women come to the conversation not with the issue of authority. They want to know if you're fulfilling your role as a man in the house. And they have a down pat. You're supposed to be provider, prophet, and priest. Men do not start with status. They start with authority. But your authority basically flows from your status. If you're not in a position, you don't have no authority. And notice, it comes and connects with power, which is both relational and positional. When we get to power now, 4 types of power. You have traditional power that resided in the man. I am the king. I am the breadwinner. The drumstick is for me. You see, that's how they defined it long time in Huey. When we eating, the back and neck for the children, the drumstick is for daddy. Why? Now the traditional man had a rude awakening. He carried his family out for dinner, but he went by KFC and by a bucket. He thought it only had one drumstick in the bucket. And when he picked it, pull out a drumstick. And his wife pull out a drumstick. His symbol of power. He was emasculated. So we have built false images of male power. Then you have what is called hedonistic model of power, where power resides in the individual. Everybody have their own rights and power. Then the egalitarian basically is, let's see if we can share power equally. That's North America. That's Europe. The dog have rights. The cat have rights. The children have rights. Everybody have power. You touch us and I'll call the cops for you. And then there is the empowerment model, where you recognize as a man, you know what? My wife may have more power than me in certain areas. And her job is to empower me and vice versa. So we have to get it clear. You cannot start with authority and power. You cannot start it. You have to start with position, which is status. And out of status, we now say, if you are in charge of this based on your status, then your job description is now your role. But if you have not done the psychological adjustment from status to role, that is where we are dropping the battle. Men are critically judged and assessed by yourself, by your peers, by elders, based on the dominant ideals of manhood. What is a real man? And we have these ideals of a real man, and so we are judged by it. So across societies, this means that exercising control over women, being tough, being strong. It also means achieving something as much as man up. And many men, including low-income men, struggle because society tells you, man up, make money. What we need to do is challenge the norms of this collective behavior. Even women are raising their sons with that kind of pressure. If we are going to push for gender equality, we need also to do what? Empower our men. Part of the problem is that because we're not empowering men, we are not challenging the prevailing social norms. We need to be encouraging men to adopt new roles and behaviors. Unfortunately, when we are judged, men and women come down on us. At the end of the day, the pressure we feel because we are not, quote unquote, performing according to the ideals, because men are ridiculed and belittled. So you walk away feeling dejected. What we need to do, the same way we invest in women empowerment, we have to seek about the empowerment of men. To do that, we have to unmask what is called toxic masculinity. Not my phrase. Agbo talks about the toxic masculinity. Notice, toxic masculinity, you start with dealing with the emasculation of males. What does that mean? When a woman say, you're not a real man because your penis is too small, you can't satisfy me. Look at that. But if we believe it, that is what defines me, when children are taught by modeling behavior to be disrespectful to daddies and to men, guess what? Emasculation. It started way back in slavery, when the slave plantation owner could take your woman And you have to say 0 emasculation. That is toxic masculinity. Then there's initiation. In some cultures, initiation says you need to go through so to be a real man. And if you ain't go through it, the gangs have initiation. To be a real man, you have to kill somebody. And there's suppressed emotion. Toxic masculinity. It goes in the form of big boys don't cry. So what we have learned to do is to stuff our emotions. How you going, man? I cool, all right, yeah, good. I too blessed to be stressed. And all your head falling off. There's a depth. But you have to be strong for everybody, if you ain't strong. Because we feel uncomfortable as men to share our emotions. The widow effect is when 2 people, male, female, husband, wife, they live together for years into old age. One dies, the other one quickly goes. The widow effect. But what they are discovering is that if the man dies, the woman is actually outliving the man. She will go, but she's outliving the man. And so research went in because this thing of suppressed emotion. They say, why is that happening? You know what they discovered? Women are so relational. When they're in pain, they talk. They find somebody. They ventilate. A man experiences a grief. He ain't talking because he's a man. Oh yeah, it's cool, man. I can live without Shiba. I can live without... And feelings killing you. So when you suppress these emotions, these toxic emotions, you're actually shortening your life. Do you have a friend that you could vent with who would look at you funny? In fact, Kent Hughes in the book Disciplines of a Godly Man, he says men don't even come near the friendship that women do. We feel uncomfortable when our brother going through kind of thing, suppressed emotion. And then there's violence. Toxic. You see, we believe that only men commit violence. I was saying to a group recently, I said, all your women wicked. Do you know that serial killer who are women? Do you know a woman could rape a man? Violence has been perpetuated against men. But we have this myth. I cannot report to the police. I just get beaten by my wife. But if I lift a finger to hit her, 10 police jeeps with gun and fella rolling on the ground, coming out looking for me. And there's this myth, be a man. What does that mean? And they're never a victim. A man is never a victim, We are always doing the wrong. Until we develop a victim mentality of learned helplessness. Yeah, it's me, I do it. Yeah, it's me. All you call it my name is me, yeah. My mother never did like me, it's me. My father didn't like me. The teacher didn't like me. The principal didn't like me. Oh, yeah. It's the system, boy. The system be like black man, boy. The system. It's the system. And we blame everybody else. Because we develop this victim mentality. You ever heard about the initiation rite of the Amazon forest tribe using the bullet ants? While many cultures have ceremonies to commemorate boys' entrance to manhood, none is more unique like the Maui tribe. They actually believe that you have to go through a painful rite of passage to show and to be accepted as you're a real man. What they will do? They believe that any boy who wants to become a man, he must experience the worst pain the jungle has to offer. The sting of the bullet ant. Right? Like becoming a man? The bullet ant is a species of ant with the most painful sting of any insect. Through this sting, the ant supposedly has a sting that feels comparable to being shot by a bullet. The pain continues for up to 24 hours. That's a real man. So, for their manhood ritual, the Maoris submerge hundreds of bullet ants in a natural sedative, rendering them unconscious. These large ants are then woven into gloves made of leaves with their stingers pointed towards the inside of the glove. So, when the ant regains consciousness, these gloves are then placed on the hands of young men undergoing the ritual. That's a real man. The boy must then keep the gloves on in his hand for a full 5 minutes while the hundreds of ants repeatedly sting him. What a man. The bullet ant glove is then removed, but the boy will likely be in pain and shake uncontrollably for hours. He may even experience paralysis, disorientation, hallucination. To fully complete the initiation and be accepted as a man by the tribe, the boy must endure this practice a total of 20 times over the course of months or even sometimes years. So in actual fact, this ritual is meant to prepare the boys for the traditional life of the man, where he will face the dangers of the jungle as a hunter and a warrior. They believe the boy who wants to become a man must experience the worst pain the jungle could offer him. My friend, we may not use the bulletins, but we've used all kinds of ways to try to prove masculinity. I go back to this concluding reality. The biblical starting point is Genesis 1, 26 and 27 and 9, 7, where God created us in His image and likeness. Underscore this point then. Real worth of the sense of self is ontologically driven and defined. What's the meaning of that big word? When you talk about ontology, you're talking about the essence of being. It is contrasted to doing. So your identity is tied to your being, not your doing. Your identity is tied to your being, not your appearance. Because, here's how we test this. All the natural and physical indicators of masculinity, natural, that's outside, they will eventually cease. Then what become of us? You feel is your muscles? Guess what? If you live long enough, everything solutes out. Live long enough, you will see what happens. Is it your physical ability to do things? That's what makes you a man? That's why an old fella is trying to tell him, Papa, come down from the ladder. No, I could do it. And when you fall, that bone not healing. Because you think masculinity is climbing that roof and think, is it that? Is it that really? All of the physical things, when all is said and done, your real worth as a man is flowing from your image and likeness. Ontologically, we talk about your essence of being. God bless you guys.